Ahoy folks, and welcome back to Broadside Gaming with me, Zug. So today we are taking a look at the Zealot, and one of my favourite builds has now been updated for Unlocked and Loaded. And it's a little bit different than it was before, but I'd say it works even better now. So let's jump in and have a look. So first of all, we're going to look at the weapons. We're still using the Assault Chainsword. My favourite variety is the Mark 13G. It just has a bit of a nicer attack pattern for just cleaving through light attacks in hordes and things. So this is how we're going to be building it. You're going to want to look for damage, finesse, penetration, and shredder to be the highest, and mobility is going to be your dump stat as usual. But I've actually found one here that has a little bit more of a even spread that I quite enjoy it. I mean, I don't want mobility to be too low because you're still a zealot and you still want to be able to move, but that's kind of one you want to be edging towards lower than the rest. Whereas damage, finesse, and penetration will have to be up as high as you can get them, just to maximise that damage. And now for perks, we're going for the usual 25% damage to flak armored enemies, which is the most prevalent armor type in the game at the moment. So this is just going to give us a good spread of damage through that. And we're going for crit. This is an incredibly high crit build, and we want to try and eke out as much as we can from every single opportunity. And then for the blessings, we're staying with what we had before, which is Shred and Bloodletter. Now, we do actually have a way of putting bleed through our build now, not just with the chainsword, but bleed is still going to be a big portion of how we're going to be outputting some damage. So Bloodletter is still pretty high up there with what we want. Now, for the secondary weapon, we are going for the braced autogun, more specifically the Agrippina Mark 7. No, Mark 8. I can't read. Again, the spread we're going to be using is ammo is going to be our dump stat. Everything else as close as you can get to 80 as you can. This one's not quite perfect. As you can see, stopping power on mine is quite low. I would prefer that 5% from ammo go to stopping power. So we've got the nice spread of 480 stats and 160. And for the perks, we're going with Maniac and Unyielding. Now, Unyielding is very, very important because this is going to be our boss damage and our damage on all Ogryn type enemies. So this is going to be really, really good for just dump firing into, Plague Ogryns, Chaos Spawns, Beasts of Nurgle, etc. And talking of that, that is also why we're taking Inspiring Barrage, because it currently is absolutely insanely broken, but not bugged broken. It's broken because it's been buffed. And this is just going to allow us to farm back huge amounts of toughness while just bracing the autogun and just firing into crowds. So, Inspiring Barrage is going to be our main stat on this. And secondly, we're taking Speed Load. Now, a lot of you may remember how dismissive I have been of speed load through the years, but on this weapon it is actually really, really, really good and quite important, and I'm going to quickly show you why. So, nice pack of monsters here, and we're just going to brace and fire it. As you can see, it does horrific amounts of damage and allows us to fire and reload pretty damn quickly. Also, I find it hilarious that the flamers do this now. I just think it's funny. But yeah, speed load, yes. Keep on topic, Zog. Is just going to allow us to keep dumping and farming toughness back as much as we can. And so the ability to load faster is actually going to work out to be more damage, more toughness, so on. So as we can load faster, it's just going to be giving us that more toughness being farmed back. There we go. So that is the secondary. Let's take a look at the Curios. So the Curios are going to work like this. We are taking max health throughout all of them, with damage resistant snipers, damage resistant gunners. They are going to be the most dangerous thing to us in the game. Gunners are still just incredibly scary. That they have toned down their damage ever so slightly, but it's still pretty goddamn scary in Damnation Uruk and all the other higher end stuff when they spawn in those huge blobs. And damage resistant snipers, because snipers can and will ruin our day. Most of the time, you will be able to just dodge them. You'll see the beam and you can just dodge and get out of the way. But as I said, as you get into higher difficulties, the mob density is going to be much, much higher, and your ability to suddenly throw yourself to one side is going to be decreased. So this is there to stop that one shot from snipers. Now, on the first one, we're going to be taking stamina regeneration, but only once, because stamina regeneration is actually quite useful for us, which allows us to keep dodging and blocking, so on and so forth. And on the other two, we are taking toughness. Now, you're probably wondering why we're taking toughness instead of max health, because all Curios aren't created equally. We get far more bang for a buck with taking max health as the blessing, but if all things were equal, so if we were getting 21% toughness instead of 21% health, we would be taking toughness. But because we only get 17%, we're now taking toughness as the main blessing. And because on the perks, toughness and max health are basically equal, we're taking toughness. Because 1-to-1, toughness is always more useful, but because we get far less on the blessings, we're taking health. And also health is very, very important, because it allows us to basically shrug off hits. We're going to be wanting to keep our toughness up as much as we can, because we have a lot of ways to regenerate, but you will be taking chip damage. There is no way to avoid that. So that is how we're dealing with the Curios, and now we'll take a quick look at the talents. So let's start off here on the right side. So we're taking Backstabber for 20% damage on melee backstab hits. We're moving around so much, more than half of our hits are going to be backstab, so huge amount of damage boosters there. We're taking Scourge. Melee critical hits apply bleed, causing damage over time. Melee hits on bleeding enemies grant 10% critical strike chance for 3 seconds, stacks 3 times. So that can be running at 30% if it's a large target, we're managing to keep that bleed on them for that length of time. But we're not only getting passive bleed from this, we're also getting the bleed off of our Chainsword. So we've got Bloodletter here, and then we have a passive way of applying bleed here, which is just going to equal lots and lots of damage, which is what we want. And then we're coming down here for more toughness, and then we're going to be grabbing Enduring Faith. Now, 50% toughness damage reduction on critical hit for 4 seconds. We have so much crit in this build, this is basically running at all times. So we are taking 50% less toughness damage just off the bat from doing nothing but fighting, which is what we'll be doing. So there you go, lots of lovely defense. Now, you can take Second Wind, replenish 15% toughness on a successful dodge. I've chosen to not take Second Wind and instead to take Righteous Warrior. 10% crit chance from Blazing Piety. I'm just trying to eke out as much damage as we can get from this build, so I prefer to take Righteous Warrior over Second Wind. But if that is your bag, you can obviously change them around and have Second Wind back. Now, I'm going to be going down the middle tree. So we're taking Anointed in Blood, up to 25% base range damage, reduce the further you are from the target. We're going to be fighting mostly in melee, and we're going to be using the Braced Autogun in melee. So this is just a big pile of damage chocked on top of that. And then Purge the Unclean, 20% increased damage against infested and unyielding enemies. This counts for both melee and ranged, so again, stacking that damage. And then down here to Restoring Faith. On taking damage, heal 20% of that damage occurs over 4 seconds. Again, this is going to help us healing that chip damage. So we've got such a great pool of health. This is just going to help us maintain that. And then we're going to be taking my favourite, the Immolation Grenade. Now, if you've not seen any of these videos before, or you're just new to the Zealot, Immolation Grenade is hilarious. When there's a big pile of mobs, you just chuck it in and watch them all burn. So again, this is just going to help with that dot damage. Obviously, you can, while you're fighting, if you need to, drop it point blank and just carry on. I do love the Immolation Grenade. And then we're going over here on the right again. We're going to be taking the toughness damage reduction here into Dance of Death, 75% spread and 50% less recoil for 3 seconds on a successful dodge. For a Zealot, we're going to be dodging an awful lot. And then we're going to be taking by Rafby Swift. Enemy melee attacks cannot stun you, and on taking damage, gain 15% movement speed. This is just going to help us survive even more by letting us Billy Whiz Kid our way out of there. And then we're going to be taking Good Balance. A successful dodge grant 25% damage reduction for 2.5 seconds. So as you can see, we were really stacking up that the ability to basically not take damage. And if we do take damage, we can shrug it off. And then we're going to be coming over here onto the left and going straight into Duelist. 50% weak spot and critical hit damage for 3 seconds on successful dodge. Again, all working into that ability to dodge and not take damage. So when you dodge, you are basically rewarded with taking less damage and doing more damage. And then we're going to be taking Until Death. Fatal damage instead grants you invulnerability for 5 seconds. Can only occur every 2 minutes, basically. It's just a really nice talent to take. If you can fit it into a build, I'd always suggest taking it. And then Holy Revenant. When Until Death ends, you regain health based on the damage you dealt during Until Death to a maximum of 25% max health. Melee damage dealt heals 3 times that amount. So that basically means during Until Death, if you're using your melee weapon to kill things, you get more back than you would if you used your range. I complain about this every single time I talk about it, but this has been nerfed massively since its first iteration. You used to be able to heal yourself to full and basically ignore the bad thing that happened. Now it's only 25%, but it's still good and very useful. Next up is Benediction. 15% toughness damage reduction for you and your allies in Coherency. Again, that's a lot of toughness damage reduction we're taking from all of our talents. And then we're coming down here to Fury of the Faithful. You dash forwards, replenishing 50% toughness and gaining 20% attack speed for 10 seconds. Your next melee hit gains 25% damage and is a guaranteed critical hit. And we'll also be taking Redoubled Zeal, which allows us 2 charges of this. Now, if you can actually get this to work, a good thing to do, say you're charging at a crusher, you rev your sword, and then let it drop. If you time it correctly, every single tick of the Chainsword is a crit. But obviously I'm recording, so it didn't work. But yeah, basically charge, rev, let go. And hopefully every single tick of your Chainsword will be a critical hit and chew up whatever you're aiming for. And then we'll be heading on down the left side of the tree still. Sadly, we haven't got enough points for Faithful Frenzy or Sustained Assault. These are usually 2 of my must-haves, but in this build, we can't really fit them in. So we're coming down here to Punishment. Melee attacks that hit at least 3 enemies grant plus 5% impact strength for 5 seconds, stacks 5 times. At max stacks, gain uninterruptible. So impact is basically giving you more stagger. It is allowing you to basically knock things off of kilter and keep them stunned. But you also need to be doing it in a horde. So one-on-one, this isn't going to help too much, but in a horde situation, especially with the Chainsword, it is going to help quite a lot. And it will just keep the poxwalkers and general chaff enemies off of you. And then we're coming down here to Invocation of Death. 200% ability cooldown regeneration on per 4 seconds on melee critical hit. We're going to be critting basically continuously, so your combat ability, which is Fury of the Faithful, should be off cooldown about 80% of the time. And then we'll be taking Blazing Piety as our keystone. 15% critical hit chance for 8 seconds when in Fury. Fury is triggered when 25 enemies have died within 25 meters. You'll find, even especially on higher difficulties, when the mob density is a lot higher, you'll basically be running this. This will have huge amounts of uptime. The only time you'll see it fall off is when you're transitioning between sort of one horde situation to the next. And then we'll be Fury Rising. Critical hits also count up towards triggering Fury. Again, we're stacking huge amounts of crit. So this is just going to help us even more. And last but not least, Righteous Warrior. Plus 10% critical hit chance from Blazing Piety. Again, more crit. So in this build we have a disgusting amount of defense and ways to shrug off damage and heal ourselves, and also just taking as much advantage of crit as we can. So that is generally the overview for the build, guys, but there are a few other little bits I just wanted to quickly talk about. If the braced autogun is not your cup of tea, which some people just don't like it, you can take the newly acquired Recon Lasgun. It does not do as much as you would hope it would do in this build. This build is mostly built around being able to get toughness back from our ranged weapon. But if you want something reliable to be able to shoot, the Recon Lasgun is a pretty good choice. You see, even on heavily armoured targets, it does quite a lot of damage. You know, you're not going to be hosing down carapace armour and crushers like you would do on the veteran, but still, it's ridiculously accurate, packs a massive punch, and it's got Infernus on it for more tick damage. And also, finally, after 2 years, the bolt gun is now good again. It has massively reduced sway, the damage has been ticked up, and basically it doesn't feel like you're trying to fire this on the deck of a ship. And the bolt gun, you basically just mag dump into anything you want dead. It has a massively long reload time on it, but it does exactly what it says on the tin. You want that crusher dead? Just mag dump into it. Now, these blessings that I have on the gun are not the they're not what we want right now. At the moment, I just have lots more crit on it. And perk-wise, though, if you're using the bolt gun for this build, I would highly suggest Flak and Unyielding. It's going to give you boss damage, and then it's going to give you damage against most enemies that you're going to come up against. Now, for blessings, let's have a quick jump into the mastery. And so, I would take Inspiring Barrage and Cavalcade. I would not suggest Surgical. I unlocked this by mistake. I would basically say Inspiring Barrage and Cavalcade, sorry. So you're getting a huge amount of crit as you're mag dumping, and also you're farming back huge amounts of toughness. There are a few others you could go for Glory Hunter, but you'd probably eke out more toughness from Inspiring Barrage. I mean, if you wanted to go full defense, you could take both of these, Glory Hunter and Inspiring Barrage. If you want to just get more damage for yourself, you could go for Fire Frenzy. I mean, pinning fire isn't as strong as it used to be. Puncture is probably a good choice. Range hits add 2 stacks of bleed to enemies. I mean, you could go for Puncture and Inspiring Barrage. That would probably be quite a sensible way to go about it. But you would lose a bit of damage. But you could mag dump into a huge horde. Even if you don't kill things, you now have bleed stacks on those enemies. So the more I think about it, the more I would say your choice is between Inspiring Barrage, Puncture, and Cavalcade. I'm probably going to end up using these. It's just because I haven't got around to unlocking this yet. So, I will probably end up using a bolt gun with this build for the first time ever. Because also, it looks really cool. But if you want tried, tested, and just very overpowered, the braced autogun is a very, very good way to go about using this build. But it's nice to know you have options. But still, before I go on rambling about every single goddamn ranged weapon in the Zealot's arsenal, I shall leave it there, folks. So I really do hope this build helps you. And if it does, please do like, subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. It really does help us out. And I shall see you all for the next video. So until then, take it easy, and I'll see you later.